There are risk factors associated with buying any new business, and I'm sure you all know that. But when it comes to buying a gas station, like last week, I spoke about 9 factors to check as part of your normal due diligence for your business. But this week, I want to address 7 additional hidden risk factors that can also literally make or break your business, even before you get started with your new business. So you need to check and verify that will not be the case when you're buying your new business. Stay tuned and I will tell you all about them.
Welcome to the one and only Gas Station Business 101 podcast, where you can learn all the secrets about how to start and operate a gas station business successfully and make money. This podcast is brought to you by the good folks at GSB Academy Publishing Company. And now, here is your host, Shabir Hossain.
Welcome to Gas Station Business 101 podcast. I'm your host, Shabir Hossain, and this is episode number 41. This is the only show of its kind where we discuss how to start, run, and grow a gas station business successfully, where I also share many real-life examples and case studies so you can take notes and become successful by using those tricks and tips in your own business. Now, let's get started about today's episode. As you know, today's episode is the second part of due diligence. And today's episode is the 7 risk factors you should check before you buy your new gas station business. As you are aware that most every new business has its own sets of challenges and risk factors. I spoke about some of these risk and challenges in episode 32. If you haven't heard that episode, I strongly advise that you do so, as in that episode I discussed many of the legal issues that our business face and how to mitigate them the proper and most cost-effective ways. So please, by all means, listen to episode 32. And as I said, this is the second part of the due diligence. So episode 40 is where you need to get started. If you're listening to this episode for the first time, I would strongly advise you listen to episode 40. That way you'll get the full picture of every little detail as far as when it comes to due diligence. As you recall, if you've heard the episode 40, but I just want to touch on the main points that what we have discussed in the last episode, which were the 9 due diligence checkpoints that you need to check and verify. And those were, number 1 was the store location, or the location itself for that matter. Number 2 would be demographics. Number 3 was age and brand of that location and the store. Number 4 is the physical inspection of the store and all the issues that you have noticed in a store that you're looking to buy. Number 5 was any recommended upgrades and how much those upgrades would cost. That is part of your due diligence. You need to know that. Number 6 was indoor issues, meaning inside the store. If there were any issues inside the store, you need to note those down. And if you can, get an idea or an estimate to know how much that would cost to fix those issues. Number 7, of course, and obviously, would be the outdoor issues, meaning if there were issues with the pumps, with the dispensers, with the tanks, and with mostly over the ground. When I said tank, a lot of times you don't get to see any issues with the tanks, but you can visually inspect the outside and see if there are issues with the canopy lights, the dispensers, and all of that, and the exterior of the building, and so on and so forth. Again, number 8 was sales and financials. Most of us, when we do due diligence of any business, we only focus on financials. If the store is making money or not, if that business is profitable or not. But there are so much more than just financial of a business that you need to worry about. For example, if a store has an issue with their dispensers or the canopy or the roof or the building, you may end up spending all your profits to fix those issues. So I want you to get the big picture at the beginning and not in the middle. And number 9 was projected P&L versus real P&L. Once you analyze all their data, all their sales and everything else, you can create some P&Ls based on those sales figures and see if this business would make money for you. That's what I call projected P&L. You can project what that business will do 6 months from now. And if you use proper data, you should be able to forecast it and be very close to that forecast sales data. But today, I want to discuss something a little bit different kind of risk that your business may face. And you can again mitigate them by checking on them before you buy the business. It is similar to buying a used car. And before you buy the car, you should take it to a great and good mechanic and have them check the car from the bottom to top and front to back. Make sure the car doesn't have any major issues or any serious issues and the car is in good condition. So similarly, you should do the same when you're buying a business. Only difference is a car would only last you 3, 4, 5 years, but a business you buy is for a lifetime. So you need to be that much more careful when you're buying a business. It's, as I said, it's not like buying a car, even though it is in a way that you need to do your due diligence similarly, but in depth. You need to be more involved. Spend more time digging into it. That way you know you're not making a huge mistake. A used car, if you buy a bad one, you may lose $10, $15, $20, $30,000 at most. But when you're buying a bad business, it can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years. So be very careful when you're looking to buy a gas station. Not that I'm trying to scare you, but I'm trying to tell you that there are things you need to check on before you buy. And once you know that these are in good shapes, then you know you can rest better at night knowing that yes, things are in good shape. So I just need to focus on my business and grow the business and make money. Okay, so the 7 risk factors that we want to talk about today, I want to list them first so you know what we'll be talking about. And these 7 risk factors are, number 1 is tanks or UST, underground storage tanks. Number 2 is City Planning Commission. And I will explain each and every one of them as I go forward. But let me just list them first. Number 3 is upcoming mandatory upgrades from your brand, if there is any. Number 4, profitability of the business. And we spoke briefly about that in the previous episode, but I just wanted to mention that here as well because it is that important. You may find a business that is in good health and perfect condition, but it's not making money. So I want to re-emphasize on that. And that's why I mentioned the same thing once again in this episode. Number 5 would be fair market price. Now, this is an important issue, and I get a lot of email from people almost every week that asking me, how do I know what price is right for my business? And I've spoken in at least 3 different episodes regarding how to price a business, how to figure out what would be the right price for a business. But I will touch on that again today. Number 6 would be competition. Who are you competing with? And why would that matter? Well, I will explain. Number 7, health, age, and the condition of the store, the equipment of the store, and the structure of the facility. And I touched briefly on that in episode 40, but again, I want to touch on that once again, maybe from a little bit different angle, but that way you will have the whole picture. Now, let's jump right in. And very important one is the very first one, which is tanks. This one item can literally break your business. If you buy this station, a wrong business that is in need of an upgrade of the tanks, For example, a gas station, if you're leasing it, maybe you spend 100,000, 150,000 to buy the goodwill and get into the store, a business rather, and pay rent every month to run that business. What if 3 months down the road you find out that the store, the business, has a bad tank underground, and your lease says you're responsible for any and all upgrades and repairs, even including the tanks? What if it says that? Then all of a sudden you're faced with a couple of $100,000 worth of expenses. So this is the most vital due diligence that you can do for a gas station. For years, gas station tanks were always built with metal. They were all metal tanks. So anytime you put a metal tank under the ground, and since there are water and everything else under the ground, naturally those tanks started some type of corrosion. It's normal for a metal tank to be corroded under the ground because, as I said, it has lots of chemical under the ground from the soil, and the water and everything else would make the metal get corroded. So over time, these tanks would leak because the corrosion would eat away the metal, and one day you will start seeing some leaks. Well, you won't really see the leak, but you will feel it because, let's say you get delivery every week or so, and all of a sudden you will see that even though you didn't sell as much fuel, you're still losing fuel from your tank because you measure your tank every day by various methods, depending on what station and how new your station is. Either, I'm sure some of you have seen that people take a big wooden stick and put it into a opening under the ground where they measure how much gasoline is in that tank. But lately, nowadays, most of the gas station has some electronic measuring device inside the store where they can just get a printout and it tells you how much fuel you have under the ground. But see, only in last 20-25 years, most of the gas stations have moved away from having those metal tanks to double fiberglass coated tanks. These are tanks that are made out of fiberglass, and fiberglass, of course, doesn't get corroded. Corrosion is something that does not touch these fiberglass tanks. But there are tanks still out there with metal. Or, for example, if you even have a double fiberglass coated tank, does not mean that that tank cannot leak. There are ways that tank can also leak and create problem. So if you end up with a gas station that has one of those old metal tanks, rest assured that tank most likely already has an issue or it has leaked before. So my suggestion is you don't need to worry about what I'm talking about here as far as corrosion, metal tank or fiberglass tanks, because some of you may not even understand or get to deal with it ever. If you have good set of tanks, you will never have to deal with it. But the best way to find out about these things is, first, ask the seller. Ask them what type of tanks do they have underground. Second thing is, ask them for a copy of tank registration. Once they give you a copy of tank registration, this is usually a license that the Department of Environmental Management of any state, any locality, any city, any, as I said, state or provinces even, they issue this. So whichever country you're in, if they have a document called tank registration, you need to contact that department. For example, in our case, I would contact Alabama Department of Environmental Management, and once I have a copy of the tank registration, there is a unique number that identifies that store and those tanks. I can then ask somebody at that office who oversees this area of the area that you're looking to buy a station, that once you give them the number, they can look up that file and tell you when those tanks were installed, how big those tanks were, what are the health condition of that tank, because they do a test, or they require you to do a test once every year. In most states, that requires you to have a tank tightness test done. That means it's a test that tells them if the tanks are leaking or not. It's called a tank tightness test. And they may have a updated report on their file, and they can tell you everything about those tanks. Even they will tell you if those tanks had issues before. For example, one time many years ago, I was looking to buy a station, and I found out from the Department of Environmental Management that that station already had a leak problem where they had to come in and other contractors had to get involved, and they had to get a lot of work done to that station, and even had that store shut down for a couple of months at one point. So these are red flags. Obviously, you do not want some business that you're buying that has contaminated under the ground, because that's a responsibility ultimately would bear with the owner. So if you buy a property that is already, the ground has been contaminated with leaking fuel, you may end up paying for a cleanup fee. Well, most of the time the insurance kicks in, of various types of insurance that we have. But again, I wouldn't risk it. I would make sure I check into it. And if there is any issue with tanks, I move on, regardless how much business that store does. So simply contact that department. Let them tell you if there was any issue before. If not, what is the status of the tank and how new these tanks are. They will also tell you when the tanks were installed. They will give you an exact date of installation. So you know if the tanks were installed in the last 15, 18, 20 years. They will even tell you if these are fiberglass tanks or metal tanks. If they're metal tanks, those people can also tell you when to replace it, because most states in the United States nowadays, they're going and moving away from metal tanks to fiberglass tanks. I think I mentioned in an episode or two ago that state of Florida recently, in just last few years, they completed their project of moving away from metal to fiberglass tanks. And they gave store owners, I believe, about 7 to 8 years to upgrade those tanks. Well, it sounds pretty long time, but it usually takes that long, because you cannot just mandate a new law and expect every gas station owner to have $100,000 or $150,000 or $200,000 cash to upgrade this. So they gave people enough time to upgrade, and whoever didn't, they just closed their store and moved away and didn't operate it as a gas station anymore. And that's fine. If you do not want to comply, just shut it down and you'll be okay. The state will not run after you because you closed your store. But you have to comply if you want to keep this business open. And many other states have done so already. So whichever states you are in or whichever country you're in, you need to check and verify and make sure the tanks are in good shape. Now, there are other ways that I check the tanks. I usually call every city, state, county has some type of companies that works directly with gas station pumps, tanks, canopies, and those sort of things. They're petroleum equipment companies. And I usually contact one of those companies and ask them to do a few tests on the tank. One, for example, would be tank tightness test. Another one is called spill bucket test. And these are the tests that I have them do to make sure the tanks are in good shape. And if I'm getting a loan from a bank to buy a gas station, then the bank also requires you to do 2 additional tests. They're more expensive, of course. They're called phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is something that involves tank tightness test, spill bucket test, and another additional test. They all compile into one called phase 1 test. And this phase 1 tells the bank the tanks are in good shape. Phase 2, on the other hand, is more expensive. They typically, in our state, cost right around $3,000 to $5,000. And without that, a lot of banks will not loan you money to buy a gas station. And this is more of an invasive test, where a company would come in and dig hole in all around the store. Very tiny hole, but they will go 30, 40 feet deep, and they will take soil sample. And they will test that sample to make sure there is no gasoline mixed in that soil. If there is, then they know there is a problem in the tank. So this is more of an, as I said, invasive test, and it requires quite a bit of money. But a lot of the times I have seen some banks, if they see the age of the store is not more than 20 years, they would be happy with phase 1 test. But if you're buying an older facility, or if the banks are not very familiar with gas station business, they may want you to get both of these tests done, 1 and 2 both, where it, as I said, it may cost you anywhere from $5,000 to $6,000 if you do both of those tests. So make sure you understand how important the tank is and how important for you to check those tanks, regardless if you're leasing or buying. But one note I need to mention here, important one, that is, if you're leasing a store, make sure your lease spells it out where anything underground you should not be responsible for. Your landlord should take the responsibility for anything under the ground. And anything over the ground is typically a leaseholder's responsibility. For example, if I'm leasing a business, anything goes wrong with the pumps, the dispensers, the hose, the nozzle, parking lot, or the front door of the gas station, or the cooler for that matter, or the air conditioner for that matter, those are my responsibility. I fix those. But if anything goes wrong under the ground, it's the landlord's responsibility. Most of the time, most commercial leases for gas stations usually says that, but you need to check and verify that your lease says the same thing. This is a protection you need to have. As I said, if not, you can lease a gas station and make money for a couple of months. Then all of a sudden, one day, you would face a expense of hundreds of thousands of dollars, which will literally break your business. So be very careful. Moving on to number 2, City Planning Commission. You may ask, what does City Planning Commission has to do with me? Well, a lot. A city and state planning commission usually can have a very positive or very negative effect on your business. To give you an example, there is a store in our area that was thriving up until 5 years ago because it's in a very busy corner and everybody was getting in and out very easily because it has 2 different entrances on one side of the road. And people were coming from either direction of the traffic, was turning in left because, as I said, it's in an intersection. So people that were making left turn would get into the store, and people that were coming on that lane from the other direction would easily get into that store. But one day we noticed that the state Department of Transportation put a center lane and a turn lane where they blocked off with a median. The middle of if you picture a 4-lane road inside a city that did not have a divider in the middle. So anybody that wanted to turn to get into the parking lot of a gas station would just stop on the left lane or the center lane and turn. But all of a sudden, they put a divider between the roads so people cannot just turn left or right. And that pretty much ruined that business. So before, people were able to get into the center lane and just make a left turn to that gas station's parking lot. But right now, they have to go up to the traffic light, wait at the traffic light, and they have to make a U-turn to get back into that gas station. And just by putting that median, that divider, that gas station got affected. Just to give you some numbers, they were doing right around 120,000 gallons a month before this change has taken place. And after the change, their volume dropped to about 45,000 gallons. So as you can imagine, a plan from the roads and all those departments, governmental agencies, they can make some minor change. And again, that change was necessary because it's a high traffic area, and the Department of Transportation didn't want people to just turn left, turn right, and turn anywhere because it was creating a traffic hazard. So they wanted to secure that road, and that's why they put that median, the divider, in between the incoming traffic and the outgoing traffic, the 4 lanes in between. But by doing so, they ruin this business. And of course, safety comes first. But as a business owner for that business, his theory, or not theory, his heartache, his pain is that he lost more than half of his business. So the reason I mention this is so you can go to your city council or planning commission and find out wherever you're looking to buy a gas station if they have any changes planned for your area, especially for the road that's right in front of your gas station. If they will be making 4-lane highway in front of your store, if they will be putting divider, if they will be changing any type of lights or lane changes or any type of things that can affect your business negatively or positively. You need to find that out, and that will benefit you in the long run and will not surprise you one fine morning. Number 3 is any upcoming mandatory upgrades. Well, upgrades are usually coming from your brand that you're carrying, the flag that you're flying in front of your gas station. Though it could be Exxon, Chevron, Texaco, Mobil, anything. Usually branded stations, they have different plans for their stations. Any branded company, they have their plans. Every year they come up with plan, and most of those plans do not usually cost you much money. For example, they may change uniform, and it may cost you a couple of $100 to order new type of uniforms. Then they may change some color palettes. And again, a lot of times they will pay for it, for you to change the color palette. But what if they have a plan for you to upgrade your register or your pumps? Or for example, this EMV upgrade where they only paid 50% and you have to come up with other 50%. So what if you buy a station, next day you find out from your brand manager that there are some upgrades that needs to be done before they can keep you on that brand. Because if a station is very much outdated and hasn't been upgraded and they have violated some of the company rules, then they would give you at least 2 different notices. They will serve you notices. From the 3rd time, they may debrand you. So for example, if you're buying from an owner who already neglected to tell you that he already received 2 different notices from his brand to upgrade certain things in the store, and then when you buy it or when you bought it, the 3rd notice comes and it says in 30 days, if you don't comply, they will come debrand your store. All of a sudden, you're in a situation where you're faced with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of bills, or not hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars worth of bills that you need to rectify some things and maintain the brand. So these are the things you need to find out from a brand that you're about to buy. Number 4, profitability of the business. Well, we talked about it last time. I just wanted to reinforce what we talked about last time. There are ways to find out if a gas station is making money. And I have spoken enough about this topic in various episodes. So if you haven't listened to those episodes, I strongly recommend you do so you know how to make sure the gas station is making money. One quick heads up on that, a quick tip rather. Regardless what type of financial documents they provide you with, always ask and see their daily closeout reports for, let's say, a whole month. Let's say this is month of August and you're looking to buy a station. Ask them for whole month of March and randomly say month of May and month of December. Give me 3 months of every day's closeout reports rather. And similarly, you should ask for again those 3 months of all the purchases, all the invoices that came from various vendors, Coke, Pepsi, Miller, Budweiser, whoever, Frito-Lay, doesn't matter, all the purchases, all the invoices, so you can see how much they bought versus how much they sold. This is the ultimate way to tell how the business is doing. Let's say if a business is buying $60,000 worth of merchandise a month and they sold let's say about $95,000 of the merchandise. If the inventory remains the same, then they're doing pretty good, because then they are showing pretty good profit. Because when you buy $60,000 of the merchandise and sell it for $90,000, there is a $30,000 difference. So that pretty much aligns with the profit margin of a gas station. See, these are the things you need to be looking at. And also, you can understand the profitability of different items that we carry in a gas station. And again, I will refer you back to the episodes where I talked about all of this, where how much percentage we make on cigarettes versus tobacco versus beer versus soda and all of that. That way you can pinpoint and calculate exactly how much money they're making. And then other part of that equation would be, how much are the expenses for the store? This seller that are giving you these financials, they may tell you that their labor cost runs X amount of dollars, their utility bills are so much and whatnot. You need to gather those up and plug in those data according to what suits you. For example, if they have 2 employees in every shift and you thought, I don't think they need 2 employees in every shift, I will have myself for 8 hours a day and then I'll have just 1 employee for the other remaining shift, then your labor cost would drastically differ from theirs, but some other fixed cost will not, the other variable cost rather will not change. For example, power bill, for example, utility bills, phone bills, internet service bills, those would remain the same or fluctuate by the weather or temperature or the season. Whatever it is, you need to plug those numbers in and see if, based on the sales, if you work and whoever works in when you're running the business, if that business will make money, provided, because one thing will drastically change is whatever money they're paying as their mortgage payment versus what you will be paying as your mortgage payment, because that store may be already bought and paid for. So that owner may not have a mortgage payment. But in your case, if you're buying a store with your down payment and finances, you may have a hefty mortgage payment every month. On top of that, you have to calculate your property taxes and commercial insurance and all that. So things can change from one person to the next as far as what they're financing and what their financial situation is. Now, if you buy the station with cash, no down payment, no financing, nothing, then you will not have any mortgage payment, which is one of the big chunk of expenses that we usually pay to the bank. So in that case, your profitability will jump really high. Even for a marginal store, it would show quite a bit of profit. So see, these kind of factors can change a lot of dynamics in a financial. So everybody's P&L can be vastly different. So you need to plug in your own data and see how this business will work for you or not. Number 5 is fair market price. Now, what is a fair market price? It is exactly what it sounds like. You're paying, or you need to pay the fair market price for a business, not more than fair and not under the fair market value. Well, if you can pay under the market value, that's beneficial for you. But chances are that you may end up paying more than the market value. So you need to be careful about that. And again, I have spoken on this note quite a few times, but I will just give you the summary of it, which is one way to find out if a gas station is valued at what the asking price is by looking at comparable sales. If you're finding this gas station through a vendor or a broker, ask them to show you some previously sold numbers of gas stations that were sold in the last 2 years in your area. That way, it will give you an idea how much that station sold for, how much the other station sold for, what was the volume of that station, and then try to match one that comes closest to your station that you're looking to buy. That is one good way to find out what the fair market value of a gas station. But let's say you do not have any comparable sales to look at. Then there are other formulas that I spoke about before where it's 2.5 times earning and all that. But again, it's not set in stone. None of that formulas are set in stone. It's only however much you can afford to pay for it versus how much money it will make. Let's say you're paying $400,000 for a gas station that will only make you $5,000 a month. Then the ROI, the return on investment, is a very long one and most likely will not be a good idea. So these are the things I want you to think about. Will it make sense for you to buy this thing? But I'm sure if you look hard enough, you will find some comparable sales, because gas station is something, even in a small city, they buy and sell very often. So let's say you live in a very rural community. You don't have any comparable sales. Then extend your search at least 100 to 150 mile radius and find some comparable sales in a bigger market. And then let's say there is a big city right around you and there is a store that was sold for $1 million, but you live 50 miles away from there in a rural community. Then that same store that cost $1 million in that city should not cost $1 million in your community. It should be lower, but not much lower. Remember, gas station cost same amount of money to build in a rural area versus a high traffic, a big city area. Only difference is the value of the land. And this value you can find out from your property tax department. Every city, county, state have them. All you have to do is go to that department or log on to their website, and you can find any parcel, any piece of land, how much the value of it as far as the government is concerned. That will give you a baseline. It's always a good starting point to see how the government values that property. And that way you know that you have a starting point. That, well, this property is valued at $200,000 and there is a gas station on top of it. So it should be at least $500,000 value for that station, because it cost anywhere from $700,000 to $800,000 just to build a gas station, even if you own the land. So there are values that to build that building, to put those tanks, to put those pumps and all those plumbings, electrical and everything else, the coolers, everything costs money. So you need to figure out, this is one of the hardest way to find the price of a gas station, but at least you can get an idea. But best thing, as I said, is to find some comparable sales. And then you can scale down from it if you're in a far away from a bigger city, or scale up from it. Because let's say you were in a bigger city, but you found a station that sold for a price in a rural area. So you can find a baseline and adjust in a sliding scale up or down based on your location. And that will give you a pretty good idea as far as how much a gas station should cost. Number 6 is, who are you competing with? It is important. How important? Well, it can pretty much break you if you are competing with some bad competitors. For example, there are some national chains nowadays that build huge stores, and I'm sure any of you that are driving around have seen stores like that, where there are 30, 40, 50 pumps, where 50 cars can pump at one time. You walk into those stores, they have 20 different IC machines, 50 different fountain machines, and 3 or 4 cashiers working in those stores with 3-4 different checkout stands. And they usually post very low gas prices. They usually post very good prices on soda, beer, cigarettes, and bigger package items like 3 12-pack of soda for $9 or whatever and whatnot. And these are big corporate stores. They are looking for volume. They're not worried about their profit margin. They just want that volume. If you buy a store near one of these stores, chances are you will not make much money. So it is important when you are looking to buy, you need to find out who else is around you, what their identities are, who's behind those stations, who owns them, and then visit those stores and see their prices. See how competitive they are. See their profit margins. And again, I'm going to refer back to you to some of my older episodes where I spoke about different profit margin on different items. if you have an idea, for example, cigarettes should be right around 13 to 15% profit margin. In some stores, even 17% profit margin. Then you go check the competitors and you found out one or two of those competitors are selling cigarettes at 7% profit margin. Then chances are you will have to do the same. And if your sales, 40% of your sales is coming from cigarettes, then you will barely survive in that store. Because 40% of your total sales is only bringing in 7% profit margin. And that is not a good thing. So checking on your competitors is as vital as checking on those underground storage tanks. Number 7, the last point, is the health, age, and the condition of the structure of the facility and the equipments of the facility. Again, going back to what we talked about in last episode, if you buy a station that has very old dispensers, the pumps, they break down every other day. They have different issues. Then you have a walk-in cooler. The doors are not well shut. The gaskets are falling apart. The AC is going bad every other day. It's leaking water everywhere. Then you will end up spending quite a bit of money upgrading, fixing different things. So it is vital to check all these. And you can even hire an inspector. For a couple of $100, they will come inspect from the AC to the dispensers and everything else and give you a complete analysis of what's taking place at that store and what needs attention and what is broken and what needs to be fixed right away. There can be a bad plumbing issue. There can be a water leak. There can be so many other things that can go wrong in a business such as gas station. So it is very important for you to spend that couple of $100 or bring somebody who knows about gasoline pumps and dispensers and other stuff in a building like cash registers, walk-in coolers, and have them check all these out. This way, you know going into it what you are walking into. You will know if the air conditioner is about to break apart. You would know if the dispensers are about to die on you. You will know if the roof leaks every time it rains. You may be looking at the store when it didn't rain. It has happened to me twice. After buying a store, the first time it rained, we had bucket full of water inside the store, and we ended up changing the roof after repairing it for like 10 times where it didn't fix the issue. We just paid $300 here, $400 there to fix the roof. Then finally one day I said, I need to just replace the roof. Cost me right around $17,000 because these are commercial roof, flat roof. Most of the gas stations have flat metal roof. They don't come easy. They don't come cheap. So it can cost a lot of money. This is one thing I have suffered. So I'm telling you, learn from my mistake. And in my early days, I have made a lot of mistakes. And now I check all of these before I say yes to any deals. And as I said, you can spend a couple of $100 to have somebody check all this. But this is money well spent. At least you know before you sign what you are getting into and what may go down, what may break down, and if you have the budget for it. Plus, when you're negotiating the price, you can use this as a negotiating tool. That, hey, your AC is about to die, your walk-in cooler is short, or your walk-in cooler doesn't work, your register needs to be upgraded, your pumps are bad, so I need some price to be reduced so I can fix all this. So this can be also a negotiating tool. And if you do it right, you can have it both. You can have them reduce the price where you have some extra cash and repair and replace whatever is broken. And that way you'll have peace in mind knowing that there are some equipments in your store that have been replaced and they're brand new. So you will not have any issue for next 10 years. If you have any question regarding what we spoke about today or any other episodes, please feel free to email me at shabir@gasstationbusiness101.com. And if you haven't signed up for my newsletter, where I send many valuable information through every couple of weeks, by all means do so. I'm not going to charge you a dime for it. but in return, you may get something that maybe is worth a lot of value to you. It may help you figure out something that you've been trying to find out for a while. So yes, there are a lot of valuable information that I am sending and I will be sending. And as I said, if you have any question, you can always email me, or you can you should join me in my new Facebook group. And that way you can instantly ask me a question on Facebook. And if I'm on it, I will answer right away. If not, I will answer it next day when I get on Facebook. And the best way to find me on Facebook is by typing my whole name, shabirhossain.net. This will take you to my Facebook group. Once again, thank you for joining me in this episode, and thank you for spending your valuable time listening to my podcast. And I appreciate it. And if you think that I'm providing good and valuable content, I would love to see a review from you on iTunes. You can simply go to iTunes and search for Gas Station Business 101 podcast. Once you find it, you can rate and say a few words as a review. And I would love to see that. And that would sure make my day. Once again, thank you, and I will see you in next episode.
This has been the one and only Gas Station Business 101 podcast with your host, Shabir Hossain. This podcast was brought to you by CSB Academy Publishing Company. Be sure to join us next time as we share with you the secrets about how to start and operate a gas station business successfully and make money.